On the evening of our third wedding anniversary, the front door pushed open, and Vincent came home. He was carrying a white airline pet carrier, wearing that smile he believed was irresistibly charming but was, in fact, laced with calculation. "Ellie, guess what surprise I have for you?" His voice was tinged with a deliberately manufactured cheerfulness, as if the months of coldness and distance between us had never existed. I was sitting on the enormous, cream-colored shaped sofa in the living room, holding a picture book that I hadn't turned a page of for ages. I lifted my eyes and watched him silently as he took off his bespoke leather shoes, slipped into his slippers, and then ceremoniously placed the carrier on the gleaming black walnut coffee table in front of me. On the table, the white roses I had arranged that morning were quietly releasing their fragrance. With a click, he opened the carrier, and a fluffy white head of a ragdoll cat poked out. Its eyes were an unreal, pure azure, like two translucent sapphires, currently filled with terror at the unfamiliar surroundings. "A cat. Isn't she cute? A seal bicolor. I picked her out especially for you." Vincent's tone was full of self-congratulatory pride. "She can keep you company from now on, so you won't always be saying you're bored at home alone." As he spoke, he reached in to lift the cat out of the carrier. Almost in the instant the cat was exposed to the air, my throat felt as if it were being squeezed shut by an invisible hand, my airway rapidly constricting. A violent sense of suffocation washed over me. My breathing became ragged and heavy, each inhalation accompanied by a sharp wheezing sound. My lungs felt as if they were being filled with cement, heavy and airtight. I instinctively grabbed the armrest of the sofa, my body curling up uncontrollably as I coughed violently. The world before me began to spin and turn black. The perfect smile on Vincent's face froze instantly, quickly replaced by thick annoyance. "Eleanor, are you pulling this stunt again? It's just a cat. Do you have to be so dramatic?" His voice was as cold as ice, without a single shred of concern. I couldn't get a word out, only a pained, suppressed wheeze. In my peripheral vision, I caught a glimpse of a delicate platinum tag hanging from the ragdoll's neck. Engraved on it in cursive was a name, Chloe. A tiny diamond was set beside it. That name was like a poison needle, stabbing viciously into the most hidden wound in my heart. "Do you have any idea what an important dinner I had to cancel to buy her for you?" Vincent's voice rose, filled with the anger of being thwarted. "Don't you dare fake being sick to get my sympathy. I don't have time to play along with your act." With the last ounce of my strength, I fumbled for and pressed the emergency call button on the side of the smart bracelet on my left wrist. It was the last gift my grandfather had given me before he passed away, connected directly to the Sioux family's private medical team, on standby 247. In the final second before I sank into darkness and lost consciousness, I vaguely heard Vincent turn and walk to the balcony, making an impatient phone call. His voice was deliberately lowered, but it still reached my ears with chilling clarity. "It's nothing. Her usual problem. Asthma. Just being dramatic. Yes, it's just a cat, and she's putting on a show, insisting she's allergic to cat fur. Don't worry, I'll do what I promised you. Chloe is here at home now. I'll send you pictures of her every day." "Shoo, don't be angry." He didn't even have the thought to call 911. His heart was only with the person on the other end of the line and the promises he made to her. And I, his wife of 3 years, my life or death was, in his eyes, nothing more than a melodramatic performance. When I opened my eyes again, I was in a sterile white medical environment, the faint smell of antiseptic lingering in the air. I was lying in a VIP room in the city's top private hospital, a place all too familiar to me. A transparent oxygen mask covered my nose, feeding cool oxygen that finally allowed my tormented lungs to breathe. I could feel my breathing becoming much steadier. The room had a heavy, soundproof door, but I could hear a fierce argument raging outside. One of the voices was one I knew all too well. "I am her husband. My name is Vincent. On what grounds are you stopping me from going in? Move." It was Vincent, his voice filled with the rage of having his authority challenged. Another calm, steady voice replied, "I'm sorry, Mr. Grant, without Miss Eleanor's permission, no one is allowed to enter this room for visitation. Those are the rules." The door was gently pushed open from the outside, and my personal assistant, Evelyn, walked in. She was dressed in a sharp black business suit, followed by 2 tall bodyguards in black suits and earpieces. They stood like sentinels, impassively blocking Vincent, who was trying to force his way in. "Ellie, you're awake. How are you feeling?" Evelyn hurried to my bedside, leaning over to tuck in my blanket, her eyes filled with genuine concern. "The doctor said you were brought in just in time. Anaphylactic shock. A few more minutes and it would have been truly dangerous." I slowly shook my head to show her I was fine, then reached up and removed the oxygen mask from my face. My throat still felt raw and sore. Open the door. My voice was quiet, but clear. Evelyn understood and gestured to the bodyguards. The moment the door opened, Vincent charged in like an angry lion. His handsome face was a mixture of fury and a poorly concealed embarrassment and unease from being publicly barred. Eleanor, what the hell are you playing at? Sending people to block me, hiring bodyguards to keep me out. Do you have any idea how much you overreacted last night? How much face I lost in front of my friends? He began with a barrage of questions, as if I were the one at fault. I didn't look at his contorted face, but turned to Evelyn and said, Evelyn, give him what's in my bag. Without a moment's hesitation, Evelyn turned, retrieved a thick manila envelope from my limited edition Hermes Birkin bag on the sofa, and elegantly handed it to Vincent. Vincent took it instinctively and looked down. On the cover, printed in bold black letters, were a few striking words. Divorce agreement. His expression went through a spectacular series of changes. First, he froze, as if he couldn't comprehend the words. Then, he scoffed, a sound filled with contempt and absurdity. Divorce. Eleanor, did the asthma cut off oxygen to your brain? Over a cat. You want to divorce me over a cat? He slammed the agreement onto the bedside table, leaned forward with his hands braced on the bed, and loomed over me. Don't you forget. Everything you have now, the villa in the clouds you live in, the Aston Martin you drive, the money you spend on bags and clothes every month. Which of these things didn't I, Vincent Grant, give you? Without me, you, Eleanor, couldn't even afford a single decent dress. I finally met his gaze, my eyes as calm as a deep pool of water. Is that so? What do you think? He said with an air of absolute certainty, his deep-seated arrogance and conceit laid bare. You're a pampered wife who has never lifted a finger, who can't even tell soy sauce from vinegar. Who would want you besides me? Eleanor, stop this nonsense and come home. I didn't engage in any further pointless arguments with him. I just calmly turned back to Evelyn and issued my instructions. Evelyn, right now, immediately notify Mr. Zhang, our lawyer, to freeze all of Mr. Grant's bank accounts and the supplementary cards to my credit cards. Effective immediately. Revoke his access to all properties and vehicles in our names. He'll have the locks and key cards changed. Also, please have the bill for that Armani couture suit he's wearing sent directly to his parents' house. I imagine he can't afford it now. The expression on Vincent's face shifted from mockery to astonishment, and from astonishment to utter disbelief. He opened his mouth as if to say something, but no words came out. He just stared at me, as if seeing me for the very first time. The next morning at 10, I arranged to meet Vincent at the revolving restaurant on the top floor of the Cloud Top Club, a place he loved to show off. It was the most exclusive private club in the city, with a 7-figure membership fee, and it had been Vincent's primary social stage for the past 3 years to display his nouveau riche status. He arrived 20 minutes late. He was no longer the dapper, impeccably groomed Mr. Grant of the past. He wore a wrinkled, old casual outfit, his face unshaven, his eyes sunken, and his complexion ashen. All his bank cards, credit cards, and even mobile payments had been frozen. He couldn't even get a hotel room last night and had to sheepishly return to his parents' old, rundown apartment complex. The only reason he got into the club today was because I had Evelyn personally go down to escort him up. Eleanor, what the hell do you want? He hissed in a low, restrained voice as soon as he sat down, drawing glances from some society ladies at the next table. Are you using these tactics to freeze my money to force me to bow down and beg you? Let me tell you, not a chance. I was slowly stirring my coffee with a small silver spoon. I had ordered a glass of lemonade for him and pushed it across the table. I'm not forcing you, Vincent. I'm informing you. I ignored his empty blustering and took a tablet out of my handbag. I unlocked it, opened an encrypted file, and turned the screen towards him. It was a detailed asset report. This is the trust fund my grandfather set up for me on my 18th birthday, with an initial capital of $50 million. After he passed away, all dividends from the Sioux Corporation's shares and revenue from overseas assets are automatically channeled into this fund. I watched him stare at the dizzying string of numbers on the screen, his hand starting to tremble involuntarily, as I continued my calm narration. For the past 3 years of our marriage, because I trusted you and because I couldn't be bothered with these things, I signed a power of attorney making you the sole authorized manager of this trust fund. I let you take my money to invest, to socialize, to build your own image, transforming you from a humble, working-class family who relied on scholarships to get through college into the young and promising, self-made Mr. Grant everyone talks about. Vincent's face went from ashen to deathly white, his lips trembling like a fish out of water. The Cloud Top Villa, no. One you live in is a property I purchased in full before our marriage. My name is the only one on the deed. The Ferrari SF90 you drive to business meetings is registered under the fund's name. The Riverside apartment you bought for your parents is also in my name, purchased with money from the fund. Even, I paused, tapping my cup lightly with the spoon, creating a crisp sound. The reason you're able to sit here today, drinking this $8 glass of lemonade, is because my trust fund has been propping up this perpetually loss-making club. I am the largest shareholder here. I took back the tablet, swiped my finger across the screen, and turned it off. Now, I have decided to terminate all authorizations granted to you, effective immediately. Mr. Zhang is already handling the necessary paperwork. I looked up and met his eyes, which were filled with shock, humiliation, and fear. Vincent, you asked me what I would have left without you. Now I'm telling you, without my money, you are nothing. Oh, and by the way, I added as if remembering something before I stood to leave, I've already signed the divorce agreement. It's right there in front of you. Out of consideration for our marriage, I'm not leaving you with nothing. The agreement states that I will give you $10,000 in cash as compensation, enough for you to rent a small room in a rough neighborhood, find a job, and start over. With that, I stood up, not sparing another glance at his bloodless face, and walked straight out of the restaurant. After cutting off all of Vincent's financial lifelines, he, as expected, began to seek other avenues. That evening, his mother, my perpetually condescending mother-in-law, broke precedent and called Evelyn. On the phone, she shed her usual acerbic tone, crying and wailing, adopting a posture of extreme humility. She said Vincent knew he was wrong and begged me to come home for dinner, for the family to sit down and talk things over properly, to avoid becoming a public joke. I knew it was a trap, but I went anyway. The Grant family lived in a high-end apartment complex in the city center, a property Vincent had bought with my money, registered under his parents' names. The dining table was laden with a sumptuous feast, almost all of which were my favorite dishes from the past. The moment I walked in, my mother-in-law rushed to greet me, grabbing my hand as tears welled up instantly, her eyes as red as a rabbit's. "Ellie, my dear daughter-in-law, it's my fault for not raising my son right." Vincent was just momentarily confused, bewitched by some vixen outside. "Please give him another chance, won't you? What couple doesn't have their quarrels? If you two divorce, where will our family's reputation go? What will the neighbors think of us?" Vincent sat opposite me at the table, head bowed, saying nothing, putting on a show of deep remorse. My usually stern father-in-law sat with a grim face, smoking, the atmosphere oppressive. "Mom, the issue between Vincent and me isn't about second chances." I gently but firmly pulled my hand away, took out my phone, unlocked it, and played a recording. It was something I had accidentally discovered. The dashcam in Vincent's car had a recording function in addition to video. This was a recording of him and his good buddies getting drunk and bragging at a karaoke bar last month. Amidst the loud music, Vincent's drunken, boastful voice was crystal clear. "Self-made. Let me tell you guys, it's better to marry well than to work hard. My wife's old man left a huge fortune when he died, and she's a clueless princess with her head in the clouds. That money would just rot in her hands. Right. It needs someone like me to make it grow. I give her a few $100,000 a month for pocket money, and she's over the moon, actually thinking I earned it." "Haha," another voice cut in. "Vince, you're the man. How did you land such a beautiful, rich wife?" "Land her. Women are easy, just need a little sweet talking." "Her, what does she know? All day, it's just flower arranging, painting, and going to art galleries. She really thinks she's some kind of fairy. Let me tell you, you can't spoil women too much. You're too good to them, and they'll walk all over you. You have to give them the cold shoulder. Make them feel like they can't live without you." The recording echoed in the restaurant, so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Every word was like a resounding slap across the Grant family's faces. The pained smile my mother-in-law had tried to force froze on her face, her mouth half open as if she were being choked. My father-in-law, who hadn't spoken, saw his face turn from ashen to a deep purple. He violently stubbed out his cigarette in the ashtray, shot to his feet, and pointed at Vincent's nose, his body trembling with rage. "You animal, you've completely disgraced the Grant family name, you worthless piece of trash." Vincent's face turned to ash, and his body began to shake like a leaf in the wind. I stood up, looking down at the spectacular expressions on their faces, then fixed my gaze on my mother-in-law. My voice was flat as I said, "Dad, Mom, it seems your family matters need some time to be sorted out. I won't disturb you. I don't have much of an appetite for this meal anyway." I turned and walked to the door. Behind me, I heard my father-in-law's furious roar, followed by the sound of a plate being smashed on the floor, and my mother-in-law's terrified screams and cries. Her voice was much more genuine than it had been on the phone. A week later, I met a friend at an art gallery I owned to see a new exhibition. The gallery was located in the city's most bustling commercial district, a place I had purchased to house my own paintings and collection. I was standing in front of an original Monet, admiring it, when Evelyn walked over and whispered something in my ear. I raised an eyebrow, set down my champagne, and followed her to the gallery's underground parking garage. The sound of a shrill argument reached us from a distance. Next to a flashy red Porsche 718, a young woman in a white slip dress and exquisite makeup stood with her hands on her hips, arguing heatedly with the property's security guard. "On what grounds are you towing my car? I'm telling you, this car was a gift from my boyfriend. You dare touch it, I'll have him sue you until you're unemployed." I recognized her at once. Chloe, a minor influencer with hundreds of thousands of followers, and the woman Vincent had been keeping on the side. The ragdoll cat named Chloe was a namesake gift from him. At this moment, she was wearing a matching platinum necklace around her fair neck. I walked over slowly, my heels clicking on the concrete. When Chloe saw me, she was stunned, a flicker of panic on her face that was quickly replaced by a defiant posture. She puffed out her chest like a battling peacock, adopting the air of the rightful wife. "Eleanor, what are you doing here? Come to laugh at me?" She looked me up and down with a contemptuous gaze. "Let me tell you, even if Vince is going through a little rough patch right now, I'm the one he loves. A dead inside, boring woman like you deserves to be abandoned. This car is proof of his love for me." I ignored her shouting and simply nodded at the tow truck driver and the head of security, who were standing by uncertainly, signaling for them to proceed. "This Porsche 718 is registered under my company, Ellie Star Investments, and is considered an illegally misappropriated corporate asset. As the legal representative of the company, I am now legally repossessing it," I explained calmly and clearly to the head of security. Chloe's scream was almost ear-splitting. "You're lying. You're slandering me. This was a birthday gift from Vince. He signed a deed of gift for me." "Oh, is that so?" I smiled, took a folder from Evelyn, pulled out a document, and showed it to her. It was indeed the vehicle deed of gift signed by Vincent, clearly stating that he was gifting the $1 million Porsche to Miss Chloe. A triumphant smile spread across Chloe's face. Then, I pulled out a second document and placed it next to the first. It was the power of attorney Vincent had signed as my fund manager. I pointed to a clause circled in red and read it aloud to her. "Without the written consent of the grantor Eleanor, the trustee Vincent may not use any asset under the fund or its holding companies, valued at over $5,000 for gifting, mortgaging, or any other form of uncompensated transfer." I looked up at her, my smile deepening. "So, Miss Chloe, do you understand now? This so-called deed of gift was a worthless piece of paper from the start. It has no legal validity. Vincent had no right to give you something that wasn't his." The smile on Chloe's face froze. I pressed on, taking a third document from the folder, a thick stack of expense reports. "Strictly speaking, Miss Chloe, everything you've received from Vincent over the past 3 years, including but not limited to the apartment you currently live in, your Hermes bags, your Cartier bracelet, and this car, totals over $800,000, all of which constitutes illegal gains. I could report this to the police, sue you for misappropriation of assets, and have everything recovered." The color drained from Chloe's face in an instant, leaving it as white as a sheet. She staggered, nearly falling to the ground. My newly purchased penthouse apartment overlooking the Huangpu River entered the construction phase. This afternoon, I had an appointment with a top designer I'd flown in from Italy to discuss the specific renovation plans on site. We took the private elevator straight to the top floor. With a soft chime, the elevator doors slid open, and the scene before me gave me a slight pause. Inside the vast, unfinished space, workers were busy, the air thick with dust and the smell of burnt wiring. And among the group of workers in uniform blue overalls and yellow hard hats, I saw an unexpected, yet somehow logical, figure: Vincent. He wore the same dusty overalls. His once meticulously styled hair was a mess, and his face was smudged with white plaster. He held a pair of pliers and a coil of wire, squatting in a corner, clumsily laying out the electrical lines. In just over 2 weeks, he had become thinner, darker. The pampered, authoritative air he once carried had been completely eroded by heavy manual labor and the dust of life, leaving only a shell of exhaustion and defeat. Our eyes met unexpectedly in the noisy air. He froze completely, like a statue paused in time. The pliers in his hand clattered to the concrete floor. The foreman in a red hard hat saw this and immediately bellowed, "Vincent, new guy, What are you staring at? Get a move on. If you don't want to work, then get out. He ignored the foreman's shouting, just stared at me, his eyes a maelstrom of emotion: shock, shame, resentment, and a final, pathetic sliver of pleading. The Italian designer, unaware of our history, began to enthusiastically explain to me in a mix of Italian and English. Miss Eleanor, you see, the view here is the best in all of Shanghai. We plan to install a 270-degree panoramic floor-to-ceiling window here. When you sit here, the entire night view of the Bund will belong to you. I smiled and nodded, listening intently to his explanation, my gaze never lingering on Vincent for more than a second, as if he were just an insignificant part of the background, a moving piece of furniture. When we began discussing the electrical layout, I seemed to remember something. I raised my hand, my recently manicured finger pointing directly at the area Vincent was working on, and said to the foreman in Chinese, "Foreman Wang, I'm not confident about the wiring over there." My voice wasn't loud, but every worker present heard it. For safety reasons, I would prefer that all electrical work in this house be handled by the most experienced master electricians. As for this new worker, perhaps he could do something else, like moving materials. My words were polite and courteous, but they were like the sharpest knife, precisely piercing what little was left of his pride. Vincent's body trembled violently, the last trace of color draining from his face, amidst the surprised, curious, and schadenfreude-filled gazes of the others. He suddenly acted as if he'd gone mad. He threw down his tools, shot up from the ground, and rushed towards me, collapsing with a thud, his knees hitting the dusty concrete floor hard. "Ellie, I was wrong. I was really wrong. I'll do anything you say. I'm begging you. Please don't do this to me." He grabbed my leg, his dust and sweat-streaked face turned up to me, crying and wailing like a child abandoned by the world. "Can we start over? I really love you. I can't live without you. Please." The surrounding workers and the designer were all stunned. I frowned in disgust, forcefully pulled my leg free, and took a large step back, putting distance between us. "Sir, I don't know you." My voice was bone-chillingly cold as I looked at the man on the floor, stripped of all dignity, and said, word by word, "Please have some self-respect. If you harass me again, I will call the police." With that, without another glance at him, I turned and walked elegantly into the elevator, leaving behind a dead silence and the utterly astounded gazes of everyone present. The elevator door slowly closed, completely shutting out the sound of his desperate wails. Chloe called me a week later. Her voice was hoarse. She asked to meet at a quiet cafe. When I saw her again, she looked haggard. The exquisite makeup she had once been so proud of could no longer hide the dark circles under her eyes. She wore a plain t-shirt and jeans, stripped of her previous arrogance, but the venom in her eyes had not diminished in the slightest. We sat by the window. Without a word, she pulled a folded piece of paper from her bag, slapped it on the table, and pushed it towards me. It was an ultrasound report. "I'm pregnant. 8 weeks. She stared at me, like a cornered beast. "It's Vincent's. Eleanor, you've already pushed him to a dead end, turning him from a high and mighty CEO into a manual laborer. Now you want to drive me and my child to our deaths. Will you only be satisfied when someone dies?" She was trying to use a child as her final bargaining chip, to bind me with morality. I picked up the report, carefully examined the date and data, my expression unchanging. Then, from my own handbag, I took out a document and gently placed it in front of her. It was a medical report in a clear plastic sleeve. "This is Vincent's prenuptial physical exam report from 3 years ago, done in Germany," I said calmly, my voice soft but clear enough for her to hear every word. "The report indicates that he has severe asthenozoospermia, with a sperm motility grade of AB below 5. The probability of natural conception is less than 1 in a million. Miss Chloe, whose child is in your belly? Do you need me to help you recall?" Chloe's face turned deathly pale in an instant. "For example," I continued slowly, enjoying the sight of her composure cracking, 3 months ago, you spent a full week at the W Hotel in the Maldives with a certain real estate CEO named Zhang. Mr. Zhang had a vasectomy the year before, so it's probably not his. Then, how about the fitness instructor you were surfing with in Sonia 2 months ago, or the drummer from that band you met at a bar last month? You investigated me." She stared at me, her eyes wide with terror, her voice trembling. "I have no interest in investigating your private life." I lifted my coffee and took a sip. I was simply liquidating my misappropriated assets and happened to stumble upon some interesting things. I pushed another printed document, a bank statement, in front of her. "For example, I discovered that you secretly transferred the money Vincent gave you, through various channels, to an anonymous overseas account. The total comes to over $837,000. Miss Chloe, this money also belongs to my trust fund, illegally transferred to you by Vincent. Tell me, what do you think would happen if I took this evidence to the police right now and sued you for collusion in illegal misappropriation and money laundering? She completely collapsed into her chair, her body shaking uncontrollably, her lips trembling, unable to utter a single word. Fear had completely replaced the venom in her eyes. I put down my coffee cup and adopted a compassionate tone, as if showing her a way out. Or, you could take the money you've worked so hard to save, buy a plane ticket to any country, and disappear, never appear in my world again, and never appear in front of Vincent again. Use that money to give the child in your belly a future. She jerked her head up, a glimmer of survival suddenly flashing in her desperate eyes. I stood up, looked down at her, and delivered my final ultimatum. I'll give you 3 days to think about it. 3 days from now, if you are still in this country, you will be greeted by a police summons and a letter from my lawyer. My life, after clearing out all this garbage, returned to a long-awaited peace. My days were simple. I painted, visited galleries, checked in on the children at my charity foundation, or met with a few close friends for tea and flower arranging, enjoying a time that was truly my own, undisturbed. This afternoon, I was in my studio finishing a new piece when Evelyn knocked and entered, her expression somewhat serious. She told me the police were here. I wasn't surprised. In the reception room, 2 police officers showed me their badges and the relevant documents. They weren't here to trouble me, but to take a statement from me. The victim, Vincent, had been officially taken into custody on suspicion of commercial fraud and embezzlement. It turned out that after being thrown out and left with nothing, he was unwilling to accept defeat. He had used the last bit of time and authority he had before I revoked his access as fund manager, colluded with a friend in finance, and forged an investment contract for an overseas project. He transferred a sum of $5 million from my trust fund into a shell company account that he controlled. He intended to use this money as capital for his comeback. He thought his plan was seamless, but he didn't know that from the moment I decided on a divorce, my legal and accounting teams had been stationed at the fund company, conducting the strictest audit of every account and every contract he had ever handled. His clumsy little scheme was under our surveillance from the very beginning. I didn't expose him immediately. I just gave him enough rope to slowly, step by step, hang himself. Miss Eleanor, were you aware of this illegal transfer of $5 million beforehand? A young officer asked formally, opening his notebook. I put on a perfectly calibrated expression of surprise and sadness and gently shook my head. Prior to this, I was completely unaware. I have always trusted my ex-husband completely. I thought our problems were merely emotional. I never imagined he would do something that broke the law. My acting was flawless. The police asked a few more routine questions, all of which I answered without a single misstep. After they left, Evelyn told me that a message had come from the detention center. Vincent had specifically asked to see me. He was very agitated and said he had something important to tell me in person. I replied with 2 simple words, no, thanks. A few days later, Evelyn brought more news. Chloe had fled. The day after Vincent was taken into custody, she had cleared out the shell company's account, first flying to Hong Kong, then transferring to Canada. After landing in Vancouver, she had even posted a high-profile update on social media, a picture of first-class champagne, her new Canadian maple leaf card, and a new pregnancy report, clearly stating she was 12 weeks along. The caption read, "Bye-bye, losers. Hello, my new life." The last straw Vincent thought would be his comeback was ruthlessly pulled out from under him by his most beloved woman. He was left with nothing and now faced a massive fraud charge. This, I suppose, was what he called true love. On the day of Vincent's trial, the court sent me a subpoena, hoping I would appear as a key witness and victim. I had my lawyer handle it. I didn't go myself. The weather was beautiful that day, a crisp and clear autumn day. I drove alone to an ancient temple in the suburbs. It was a place my grandfather had loved to visit. In the main hall, I lit a stick of incense for my grandfather and made a generous donation. Watching the curling smoke, I silently said to him, "Grandpa, I'm okay now. The lessons you taught me, I think I'm only just beginning to understand them. Ellie's grown up now. I'll take good care of myself." The mountain air was clean and sharp, blowing away the 3 long years of oppression and gloom that had weighed on my heart. As I got into my car after leaving the temple, an unknown number called. I hesitated for a moment but answered. On the other end, my former mother-in-law's hysterical sobs erupted. Ellie, it's Mom. I'm begging you. Why didn't you go to court today? Are you still angry with us?" Her voice was filled with desperation and panic. Vincent was sentenced to 15 years. 15 years. His life is ruined. Ellie, I'm begging you, please tell the judge you forgive him. Okay, can you issue a letter of forgiveness so he can get a reduced sentence? He kept calling your name in court. He said he wanted to see you one more time. He said he knows he was wrong, that he's only ever loved you. He said everything he did was to prove himself to you. Ellie, I'm on my knees. I'm begging you. The sound of knees hitting the floor and even more piercing wails came through the phone. I listened quietly, my heart a placid lake without a single ripple. Ma'am, I interrupted her crying, my voice as calm as undisturbed water. My grandfather always taught me that people must take responsibility for their own choices and actions. The path Vincent is on today is one he chose, step by step. He has no one to blame but himself. As for whether he loves me or not, is there any point in saying that now? Before she could speak again, I hung up the phone and dragged her number, along with all other contacts from the Grant family, into my blacklist. I started the car and drove down the winding mountain road. The bright sunlight streamed through the window, warm on my face. I opened all the windows, letting the fresh wind blow through my long hair. I took a deep breath, smelling the scent of pine and freedom in the air. My phone screen was lit up. The wallpaper was an oil painting I had just completed in my studio. It depicted a field of golden sunflowers, each one facing the brilliant sun, blooming with wild and defiant abandon. The title of the painting was Rebirth. 1 year later, Provence, France. I bought an ancient estate here, complete with a massive lavender field and a small vineyard. I transformed it into my studio and living space. My first solo art exhibition was held in the estate's orangery. It was a great success. Europe's top art critics and collectors attended, giving my work high praise, saying my paintings possessed the power of a phoenix rising from the ashes and the most fervent love for life. My life was prosperous, peaceful, and free. I was surrounded by friends who understood me and a passion I had poured my heart and soul into. I no longer needed to find my value or meaning in any man. On the evening the exhibition closed, a small celebration was held at the estate. Halfway through the dinner, Evelyn came to my side and handed me a letter. The envelope was a common brown paper one from my home country. There was no stamp, only a faint postmark, with my name written on it. Evelyn said she had asked a friend back home to forward it from a prison address. I took the letter and walked out onto the estate's terrace. The evening breeze was cool, the air thick with the scent of lavender. In the distance, the grapevines were silhouetted beautifully against the starlight. I opened the letter. It was Vincent's handwriting. The paper was thin, the standard issue kind from the prison, covered in dense blue-black ink. In many places, the pen had torn through the paper, either from agitation or pressure. He said he spent every day in repentance, that he woke up from nightmares countless times, all of them filled with me. He dreamed of our first meeting, me in a white dress standing before an easel. He dreamed of our wedding day, me in a white gown, standing on my toes to kiss him, telling him I do. He said he finally understood that I was the only light in his life, that he had single-handedly thrown away the world's greatest treasure. He said he had nothing now. His parents had disowned him in their shame. He said his only hope now was me. He begged me to wait for him, that even if it took over a decade, he would reform himself and then spend the rest of his life as my servant to atone for his sins. At the end of the letter, he wrote, Ellie, I love you. I stood on the terrace, looking at the vast expanse of stars, feeling as if I were reading a poorly written love story that had nothing to do with me. I didn't finish the letter. I simply refolded the sheet filled with belated, meaningless regret, and put it back in the envelope. Then, I turned, walked back inside, and went to the ancient fireplace where a warm fire was burning. I gently tossed the letter into the dancing flames. The blue flames instantly licked the pale paper, mercilessly consuming the cheap repentance and affection, quickly turning it into curled, black ash that finally dissipated into the air. I turned back to the terrace, took a glass of burgundy from a waiter's tray, and raised it to the brilliant night sky, gently clinking the glass against the air. My new life had just begun. To myself, cheers.